Hey, I like Facebook, but I see on your list here, you're going to scare me about Facebook or something.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we wanted to take a quick look back, and we've been doing quite a bit on Facebook lately, and we've brought you some information from some folks that were involved at Facebook that say, this is a really dangerous technology that's been put into place in our society. And so a number of weeks ago, we also saw a story. We just haven't had a chance to get to it yet. And that the headline involves a quote from one of these experts. And he says that Facebook is a living, breathing crime scene. Mm-hmm. Now, you might say, gosh, it doesn't make any sense, but let's think about it. They say that there have been all these crimes committed on Facebook. Take, for example, the alleged Russian interference in the presidential election. We were told that happened through Facebook ads. And I think if I remember correctly, it was about $100,000 that was spent on ads by something like 400 accounts that they thought might have come from Russia. And these ads, Facebook testified to Congress, were general in nature. So they weren't candidate specific. It wasn't, let's lock her up.
Right.
It was something more like maybe something about transphobia or, the homosexual agenda or something more generalized like that, which, yes, does inflame people's political passions, but it's not necessarily directed to a specific candidate. Okay, just to let you know what they've testified the crime was. But what this gentleman's pointing out, which I think is very interesting, is that law enforcement doesn't have access to Facebook's back-end system.
They have to give it to them.
They would have to give it to them, and they won't do that, by the way. And many of us would say, well, gosh, who would? And I get that. But think about this. They're saying that cybercrime, which is different than the normal crime that we're all familiar with, which happens in the real world, in real space, cybercrime, which happens online, took place within the Facebook universe. Now, how are we going to go investigate that when we can't access the back end of the Facebook universe to see what actually happened?
Because Facebook administration could give you whatever they wanted to and omit on purpose or by accident other important components for an investigation.
Exactly. And, the guy who said this is somebody who's been called the closest thing that Silicon Valley has to a conscience, which in and of itself is a pretty telling phrase. But he said that, quote, Facebook is a living, breathing crime scene for what happened in the 2016 election, and only they have full access to what happened. Now, within the body of this article, they also look at some other things which we have been talking about on the show already, and I just thought were, again, interesting echoes of what we've already brought to your attention, which is that they get into the fact that the way Facebook was designed was specifically designed to create chaos and polarization. So, in other words, people hating each other. And apparently that gets you more engaged in your feed.
Wow, I never thought about that. It does.
Those negative emotions of fear, anger, hatred, disgust, all that gets you more fired up than, the little Care Bears with little hearts on them and everything's so sweet and look at the baby and everything's happy.
Everybody's going to engage more if they have a strong opinion about it.
Right. Well, you just listen to me. When do I get fired up? I get fired up when I get angry about something. You start hearing me and you're going, oh my gosh, Morgan is fired up. Well, that's you at home and the car and at work. And when you get on Facebook, when you see something that you don't agree with and it gets you fired up, that apparently is part of the business model. They knew that was going to happen psychologically. They built it into Facebook. So what you see is that Facebook itself is creating this division in our society, or is a big contributor to it. It's not necessarily the only contributor, but seeing as how Facebook has 2 billion users, and most, I think, Americans are in some level on Facebook, it really is almost a ubiquitous part of socialization anymore. It's all-encompassing. Everybody's involved in it. And again, we're seeing a number of issues with it. And, they make a lot of money off of this business, Facebook does. And so, we've always had in this country this idea that if you're in a business model that you make a lot of money off of, you have to fulfill certain responsibilities to the consumers and to the American public. You can't just sort of willy-nilly, just do anything you want, sell anything you want, and not take any responsibility for it. And, of course, Facebook has not ever taken any responsibility, has never really even told us that they were building it like this. It's been a secret that's only now coming out now that everybody's hooked on it. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done to investigate Facebook, to regulate Facebook, and many, many other things that need to be addressed within the Facebook universe.
And investigate yourself if you're the kind of person who reacts to those polarizing statements and get involved and get sucked in. Maybe you just sit back and watch and are voyeuristic about it, or maybe you can check yourself and say, I'm going to stay off for a little bit because,
That's right.
I have my own brain. I make my own decisions.
Well, I mean, if it's like a drug, maybe you have to recognize if you're addicted to it and it's not doing you any good, and maybe it's time to get off of it. I don't know. And you know what? People are doing that because average daily users have dropped on Facebook. That's the most recent development. So that's a good thing. Hey, we got an update on the Las Vegas shooting when we come back on the Morgan Streetman Show.